It's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's special Paley Dialogue, a conversation with Cesar Conde. By any account, Cesar Conde is one of the most influential people in Spanish language television. With the U.S. Hispanic population at more than 56 million and growing, he's become a driving force in the media world. After graduating from Harvard and Wharton, he worked at a startup and a bank, but was drawn to TV, like all of us. He joined Univision in 2003, became president, and then headed to NBC in 2013. He is now chairman of NBCUniversal's International Group and Telemundo Enterprises. Since his arrival at Telemundo, Cesar has helped redefine Spanish language television. Today, we'll hear how and why. There's been a shift in the Hispanic market, and we'll learn this morning just how things are changing. We'll also hear Cesar's thoughts about overall programming, digital media, and how the FIFA World Cup fits into his strategy at large. We're also thrilled to have moderating today Cynthia Littleton, who's been living here this week, managing editor TV at Variety. She has covered the television beat for the past 20 years, first at United Press International, then at Broadcasting and Cable Magazine, Variety, and The Holiday Reporter, where she was named editor before rejoining Variety in 2007. Before I turn over to this session, I want to say how thrilled we are to have with us not only Cesar, who is also a Paley board member, but also our board member, Stan Schumann. I also want to recognize McKinsey, our long-term and valued official knowledge partner. We thank you for supporting this very special event. We're also delighted to have so many Media Council members in attendance, and I want to give a special welcome to all of our new members today. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you all so much for joining us. Before we begin, I'd also like to tell you briefly about some of the exciting programs coming up this year. On July 11th, we'll have a Best of Con event with Paley trustee John Miller and LA Board of Governor Michael Kassan, along with Wendy Clark, CEO of DDB North America, among others. On July 18th, and I'm announcing this for the first time today, we'll have a very rare and special program for our Media Council members with the 4 sports commissioners, the NFL's Roger Goodell, MLB's Robert Manfred, NBA's Adam Silver, and NHL's Gary Bettman. So sign up now. On September 7th, board member Mike Hopkins, CEO of Hulu, will join us. On October 3rd, we'll have Viacom Shari Redstone speaking with John Miller, both trustees of the Paley Center. On December 7th, we'll have a program with Michael Kassan, which will focus on predicting trends for 2018. And in addition to our New York programs, we also host dialogues at the Paley Center in Los Angeles, which all of our members are welcome to attend if you're traveling out that way, or just go that way just for them. So for those of you who are invited guests today and not yet members, I invite you to join our special Media Council community so that you can attend these unique programs and events and more. So now to today's program. I'm thrilled to turn it over to our distinguished moderator, Cynthia.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Cesar. It's a busy time right now in media. There's so much focus every May on the upfronts, particularly the marathon week of the broadcast upfronts. But everybody knows that the real action happens a couple of weeks after the broadcast upfronts, when the buying and the selling and jockeying really begins. Before we talk about the great sort of year that Telemundo is coming off of, can you give us a sense from the front lines how the upfront process is going right now?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you as well, Cynthia, for taking a bit of time. I know you've been extraordinarily busy here at Paley and in general, and thank you everyone for making it this morning so early in the morning. It's good to see so many smiling faces. You know, on the upfront, you know, it's I can't comment too much on it, as you can imagine. But in general, I think I would just say we're cautiously optimistic. I think, you know, for a variety of reasons. One is we're seeing tremendous growth, not only at Telemundo, but also in the broader NBCU portfolio. And I think that's great. And I think second is more and more brands, particularly Fortune 100 brands, have seen, you know, not only the growth in the demographic in the Latino community, but more importantly, the consumer spending power growth that we're seeing. And so they have woken up to that, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest. So we're cautiously optimistic.
Can I press you though? Are you into it with any buyers right now, or is it still a little bit the mating dance right now?
No, I think we're into it.
You're into it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It's gonna. I think everybody's saying it's gonna be a little. It's not gonna be that frenzied rush that it has been in past years. It's gonna be an interesting upfront. So we'll stay tuned on that. But I mean, for sure, by any measure, I've been covering Telemundo and Univision a long time, and by any measure, this was this September, this past, let's call it 18 to 24 months, has been an incredible time for Telemundo, a time of real growth, but also a really impressive innovation and changes in decades-old practices, and that I'd love to have you talk about how you identified the need to take some risks and to sort of adjust the format of the traditional telenovela that had been such a staple for Telemundo and Univision for so long, and it feels like this was the year when you really benefited from some interesting risks and interesting innovations that you introduced into the programming in the last couple of years.
Sure. Well, maybe as a little bit of a backdrop, I mean, we first of all, we have a demographic in the Latino community that, as many of us know, and I'm happy to get into it if it's of interest later, but it's growing, but more importantly, it's evolving, and I think that's pretty clear. So we have a demographic that's evolving and changing here in the United States. In addition, we have, I think, an acceleration of change in media consumption habits, not only in the overarching population, but I think particularly in the Latino community. So within that backdrop, I think we all felt that it was an opportunity ripe for a little bit of disruption. And so I'd say that first. Second is, I would tell you, we have really, and I always say this, we have an incredible team. There's a lot of people that have contributed to this thinking and this amount of work. But I think what really struck us was, because of those two fundamental changes that are occurring in the marketplace, we, Telemundo, need to evolve with that marketplace as well. And so I think that was at the crux of what we were trying to do. And our fundamental vision or premise that we landed on was this phrase that we've been trying to use, which is we wanted to redefine Hispanic media. We wanted to redefine it. One, what was our consumer expecting from Spanish language media, and then also change the perception out in the marketplace so that hopefully we could grow the business. So that really was the initial thinking around it.
And in terms of the demographic, talk about the change. The majority now of the viewers are U.S.-born Hispanics, second generation U.S., is that?
So I would tell you, as we know, this is a very large population, 57, 58 million plus. But clearly there's been sort of an evolution and growth. We've seen sort of immigration go down to net zero per se. So a lot of the growth is coming from Latinos that are born here. And so most of the population, we like to define it now as what we call 200%ers. Latinos are 100% American, but they're also 100% Latino. And I think one of the misperceptions often about Spanish language media or Hispanic media is that the people who are consuming it because they can't consume anything else. And it's really not true. The overarching and increasing amount of the population or the viewing public has the ability to see English, Spanish, across platform. And so I think it's important to recognize that. And if you recognize that, then you start producing content, you start innovating in a way that hopefully speaks and attracts that more sophisticated palette that we're seeing here in the US marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And one of the big changes was shifting some programs to mirroring more the English language drama series, where you have a season and the show is renewed for a couple of seasons, which is really a paradigm shift for Spanish language TV.
Yeah. So I mean, for a little bit of background,
super series.
Yeah, we call them super series. But for a little bit of background for the larger group is, as many people know, the traditional sort of programming genre that has worked in Spanish language media has been the telenovela genre, and it's a genre that has worked for decades, and it continues to work in certain parts of the world. In our particular case, we looked at the changing demographic and consumption patterns, and we said, look, what can we do if we were sitting in the United States and having the different experiences? What type of content would we like to see? And so we've made some fundamental changes to the telenovela genre, and that's what we came out with the super series. What were some of those changes? Traditional telenovela, as many of you know, storylines are very classic, love stories. two men love the same woman, or two women love the same man. Someone's rich, someone's poor. Someone lives in the countryside, someone lives in the city, and it's worked very well. We said, you know what? Why don't we try to go with more contemporary storylines, more edgy storylines that represent a little bit of what the U.S. Latino experience
the
is
sensibilities
about.
of people.
That's exactly right. And so, we started experimenting with storylines that spoke about issues of immigration or border. We started experimenting with storylines about growing up here in the United States in cities like Los Angeles and New York or Miami. And we hit a nerve. That started working. We also started looking at our business, I think, as a business. And in a media industry, in a world where there's a proliferation of the options that people have for content, the competition for people's eyeballs is harder and more competitive. And so we said, we want to increase the quality of production. Right. So I think we've increased the quality of the production of Spanish language. We also said, 120 to 140 episodes
That's
in a traditional
commitment in this
a big commitment.
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday,
Thursday, yeah.
in this day and age where people have short attention spans. So we started experimenting, which again may not sound like a revolutionary change, but for Spanish language media it was. We started experimenting with shorter series. So the super series is usually, instead of 120 to 140 episodes, it's 40 to 60 episodes. Now my friends in English language media will say, oh my God, you're green lighting 3 or 4 seasons at a time.
Right.
That's true, but for our marketplace, it was an innovation. And when you took the new storylines, or more contemporary storylines, higher production values, shorter series, and then we made one final innovation, which I know you're familiar with, which was, we said, gosh, it's very expensive to go out and market and promote new stories every single time. The traditional telenovela ran for 120, 140 episodes, one time, finished, done. We turned around and said, gosh, why don't we start creating franchises that if they're successful, we can continue to market them and sell them over many seasons. So a good example is a couple of weeks from now, we're going to be premiering the 5th season of El Señor de los Cielos, or The Lord of the Skies. This is one of our more successful super series. And what we found is our audience, both the core traditional Spanish language audience, as well as the young new Latino, has a strong appeal for that type of recurring franchise. And so those are some of the innovations that we made. And fast forward to today, I'd say we have about half a dozen series that are now in multiple seasons, and that's become the backbone of a lot of our primetime now.
Yeah, no, and putting up like really big numbers, beating Univision in many cases, which had been, the gap for decades between Telemundo and Univision was so huge, that has really, really narrowed.
Yeah, so to put it in a little bit of context, in 2008, the difference in primetime audience between Univision and Telemundo was about 1.5 million adults in the 18 to 49 demo. And so Univision had about a 2 or 3 times share growth. And so I'd say particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a tectonic change in Spanish language media. Latino viewers are increasingly choosing Telemundo as their preferred place for their entertainment, for their news and their sports. And that gap has been closing. We culminated last year for the first time, where we finished 2016 as the #1 Spanish language network in primetime Monday to Friday. And so that was a big development for us. But I think more important for us over the long term, because this is a marathon, as we all know, It's not a sprint, is I think we have begun to change the perception in the marketplace, not only with our viewers, but also with our advertisers, our partners and the like, that now Telemundo is the trendsetter. Now you're seeing the programming genres and the programming trends throughout Hispanic media are now beginning to mimic Telemundo, and they're going to the super series model. And so that's a great place for our company to be, not only with consumers, because I think now they know that for high quality programming that's culturally relevant to them, they're coming to Telemundo. I think it's also a great place for us to be with our partners, advertisers, brands. They want to be with that brand that's innovating, that's bringing new things to the marketplace, that's bringing authentic things to the marketplace. So that's our North Star, and that's what we're trying to do to stay authentic to our community here in the United States.
Has it been a education process with advertisers, with distributors, when you're talking about carriage deals and things like that? Has it something that has taken? Is it something that has as Telemundo's grown, the understanding has grown, or does it really take a lot of work on your team's part to make people aware of the value of your audience?
It's a good question. And I think anyone who's worked in Hispanic media or Spanish language media can identify with this. I think the media business is tough to begin with, right? You have to go out and you got to prove your value, and you got to shine amongst, again, a proliferation of many options for consumers. I think in Hispanic or Spanish language media, you have a little bit of an additional hurdle that many times when it comes to either brands or distributors, the honest truth is they're not necessarily consumers of the product, because they live here in the United States and may not speak the language.
That's a good point.
So you have to educate a little bit about the marketplace. So the more direct answer is we probably spend a portion of our time educating about the marketplace, the dynamics of it, the benefits of it, and why it can help these respective brands and distributors grow their core business. And then once you get past that, then you go to, well, what are the different options that you have in the Hispanic or Spanish language media marketplace, and why do we believe Telemundo can add more value for them? So it really is a two-pronged process. The good news is I think the first part of the process is becoming a little bit easier with time as more and more people understand the consumer spending power of this demographic, because we never tell people, hey, this is good for you to do because it's the right thing to do. We tell people this is good for you to do because it's good for your business. And for distributors are a wonderful example of this. All of the growth that distributors in the media business are seeing, in the mobile sector, cell phone companies and the like, all of the growth they're seeing is from the Hispanic demographic.
A very wired young generation.
That's exactly right. So they start seeing that. So the first part of that, of the process of convincing them and educating them about the market is getting easier, although it's still work. And then the second part of the process, obviously, because of the momentum and the trends that Telemundo is seeing, has gotten easier for us. And the thing that really resonates for our partners when it comes to Telemundo is that ratings and audience and trends, that's great. We've been going up for the last 3 or so years. We're the only large Spanish language network growing. Our competitors are all dropping. So that trend is good. But I think if you dig down one level deeper is really where we succeed, is that the quality and the type of consumer that is watching Telemundo is much more attractive for our partners. We're much younger, so we skew much younger in the 18 to 34 demo. We're like the second or third largest network in the country when it comes to the 18 to 34 demo. We have a very diverse community of Hispanics watching it, so it's also
not a monolithic.
It's not a monolithic group, so it's an attractive demo for them when they look at the Telemundo audience.
Gotcha. And of course, a lot of this growth and investment has come from Telemundo being part of the NBCUniversal family since Comcast. From the day that they announced the acquisition, they really, Steve Burke has been very vocal about seeing Telemundo as a very big growth opportunity. I would imagine that being part of that portfolio is also very helpful in terms of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a nice way of saying it. I mean, without the support of Steve and Brian, it'd be difficult to compete. And I give them a lot of credit for a couple of things. One is, I think very early on, they established, I think in all of us, and Steve has said this before, but I love this line, we approach our business as owners, not renters. We really believe in making decisions that maybe in the short term, the 3 to 5 years may not necessarily maximize what our profits will do, but if it's the right call over a 3 to 10 year period, we're going to do it every single time. And I think their approach to the potential of Telemundo in the overall Hispanic market, I think has been rooted in that philosophy. And I think second is they put their money where their mouth is. When they believe in something and they start seeing a return on that investment, it's made all the difference. And we have plenty of examples that I'm happy to get into.
Let's talk about the World Cup.
I mean, look, the World Cup is one of the very first ones. As some of you may know, Telemundo for the first time acquired the rights to the FIFA World Cup. We have 3 cycles that we purchased. So we have the World Cup exclusively in Spanish language until 2026. The first one being this coming summer in Russia in 2018. But there's many other, as you know, franchises and properties that come with FIFA, starting with this summer, the Confederations Cup. But it was a big coup for Telemundo because Univision had this property for almost 40 years. And so I think that was the first message that was sent, that Comcast, NBCU believed in the potential of Telemundo, believed in the potential of this marketplace, and we were willing to spend where we thought it made sense. So that's been one great example. A second one I tell you is our new global headquarters that we're building. So I think one of the
in Miami.
In Miami. So we're building a new headquarters for the Telemundo Enterprises business down in Miami. We announced it about a year and a half ago. We'll open in January of 2018. And we're so excited because it really is a facility that has never been seen, certainly in U.S. Hispanic media. Remember, keep in mind, one of the competitive advantages that we like to think we have is we are producing an overwhelming amount of our content here in the United States. So we have U.S. Hispanics that are born and live here making content for U.S. Hispanics.
You have a big studio operation in Hialeah.
I'd say we have a studio operation in Hialeah. I don't know if I'd say it's big and and forward thing, but now we're going to have a big one.
Okay. All right.
And what we've done is we have about 5 or 6 different facilities spread out over South Florida for Telemundo, and it's because historically the company sort of grew in little spurts here and there, and this is the first time that we're going to be able to put all of our businesses together, and I think it's going to increase the amount of teamwork and collaboration, put into it a state-of-the-art facility. When this facility opens, it will be the most forward-leaning facility that we have at Comcast NBCU.
Oh, wow.
Period. So we're extraordinarily proud. We're experimenting with a lot of new management approaches, and there'll be some things we're announcing. So it's a very forward-leaning facility, not just for Hispanic media, for media. And so that's why we're so excited, and Brian and Steve have put a lot of faith in that.
Gotcha. Let's talk a little bit more about the World Cup.
Yeah.
In terms of bringing, obviously, that it just aglow like the Hispanic world's NFL. Not that Hispanics don't also watch the NFL, but in terms of adding not just the World Cup, but all the lead-up games to it, do you see that as bringing new viewers to Telemundo, or does that cement your status as the primary network for your existing viewers?
So I'd start by giving the context. Soccer is a religion to Hispanics, and the World Cup is our cathedral. So this is the event. I think as far as how do we, where does this lay in sort of our priorities? I would tell you it's extraordinarily important for us. I think it's interesting because, and I wish I could tell you that we planned it this way, but I think the World Cup is coming at the perfect moment for us, right? Because I think if we were not really performing well and hoping that the World Cup was going to, catapult us into greatness, not going to happen. And vice versa. I think if we've been doing extraordinarily well, it maybe wouldn't have the impact. I think it's coming at the right moment because we're trending in the right direction. We have tremendous growth and innovation, and I think what we need is a platform to help us promote, but really sort of bring additional sampling that wouldn't necessarily be watching Telemundo. The perception you talked about, or you alluded to at the beginning, I think is a very fair perception. Telemundo did not have the perception in the marketplace of being the innovator, the trendsetter, the higher quality production. And there's probably still a lot of people in the marketplace that are not really clear as to what's going on at Telemundo. So it allows us to continue to refine our business, and hopefully a year from now in the summer of 2018, it'll act as that promotion vehicle. One thing that I'd point out for the World Cup, in this particular one of Russia, we're taking a little bit of a counterintuitive strategy. And so if you go back and you look at the Olympics that just occurred for NBC, we programmed it at NBC very focused on prime time. We wanted to make sure that we maximized what was the type of content, the type of events that were occurring in prime time. In this particular case, because it's Russia, the time periods, most of the games will occur early in the morning, 8 in the morning, 10 in the morning, 12 noon. And the half, you could look at that half glass empty and saying, oh gosh, it's not in prime time. For us, at this moment in our development, I think it's an incredible blessing. Why? Because the strength that we have right now at Telemundo is in prime time. That's where we've really innovated. We still have work to do in the rest of our time periods. And so what this World Cup is gonna allow us to do is, in the periods where we may not necessarily be the strongest yet, it's going to put the largest sporting event in the world flat, straight up in on our networks, and it will act as a promoter of what's going on in primetime. So for the 30 days of the World Cup, we're not preempting anything in primetime. So in contrast to where in the Olympics, we may use the Olympics at NBC to promote a great series that's coming after the Olympics, we are actually going to be programming some of our strongest stuff during the World Cup.
Tune in tonight.
That's right. Tune in tonight. So it's a little bit different, but we're very excited about it, and I think that's why that type of event with that type of time zone for us right now works very well.
And as you say, you have cool stuff to promote right now. If you were just counting on the World Cup to bring you eyeballs, that would be less of an opportunity.
Because if you imagine you get all that great sampling, and all they see is the same as always, it really doesn't maximize the opportunity. And so again, we still have work to do, but we're working very hard to be able to show some real innovative things during that time next year.
Will you do anything streaming-wise with the World Cup? Will you make it available digitally?
Yeah. So we learned a tremendous amount. I mean, we all learn a tremendous amount in all of these live events. We have the benefit of having learned a tremendous amount from the Rio Olympics via NBC, and we saw how the audience is accelerating in the change of their consumption habits. And as we all know, it was very well covered in the media. There was a lot more consumption of the Olympics and live sports on other different platforms. And so yes, the short answer is we will be making our content, our games available across networks, across platforms. We want to make sure that people have the ability to consume it when they want, how they want. In addition, we're also going to be bringing new technology. We're going to be bringing a lot of VR technology and other to make sure that we're touching on all of the innovation that's occurring, and we're bringing in any type of consumer. The other thing I think we're going to try to innovate for the World Cup that hasn't been done before is, I think one of the strengths that we've seen in our NBC Sports coverage of the Olympics throughout the years, and we can all relate, is the human interest stories that NBC brings to life, and it makes certain sports and certain athletes that may not be household names, makes them relevant to all of us, and that's what connects us to that event. I think we're going to do our version of that for the World Cup, and hopefully that brings a tremendous amount of appeal to a larger audience. So we're excited about bringing that innovation.
I'm sure you've got people already working on those packages, looking at the potential teams and combinations.
I dare not say, but we have many people who have spent many hours in Russia and around the world already. So we'll be well prepared for it.
And just to be clear, will it be an authenticated stream in terms of?
We will be offering open access for a while, and then at some point, yes, we'll have some authentication. But we're going to try to bring as many people as we can early on.
It makes sense. As an NBC exec used to say, you have the rings, and then you have to let everybody know you have the rings.
That's exactly right.
With the World Cup, do you see an opportunity, because you do have the rings every 2 years? Do you see an opportunity to marry the sports presence that you have with the Olympics every 2 years with the World Cup? Now, since you know you're going to have it for a good long time.
Yeah, no, we've, so I'd say two things to that. One is as NBCUniversal, we're very excited about 2018. I think this is the first time that this has happened in a large media company. So in 2018, we have three major sporting events that are going to be under the same roof. We are going to have the Super Bowl. We're going to have Pyeongchang, the Winter Olympics, and we're going to have the FIFA World Cup. And so for us as a company, I think we're extraordinarily excited that we're going to be able to bring all of those events to our viewers. Second thing I'd say is, as far as with our Telemundo hat on, in addition to the FIFA World Cup, one of the things that we've been able to do is partner with NBC Sports. We're able to tap in to some rights of exclusive events that we necessarily didn't have before. And so the Olympics is a wonderful example. Right. So we are now, Telemundo now is also the exclusive broadcaster of the Olympics in Spanish language. We've also been able to tap in the NFL and other rights that NBC Sports has been able to acquire. So it's a very complementary and synergistic relationship with them.
Do you see a boost for the Olympics? Do people come to you for Spanish language Olympics?
We program it. Yeah, the short answer is yes. We program it a little bit differently, as you can imagine. We take into account not only country of origin, we take into account certain sports, and we really look at it holistically. You'll notice that NBC doesn't put the same sports on NBC primetime as we do on USA or some of our other cable networks.
Why would you, right?
And same thing happens on Telemundo. So it's very, we carefully programming based on what we think the audience will uniquely connect with.
And are you able to, because NBC has done so much with the Olympics live stream, do you also program a Spanish language live stream for people if they want to customize a package of sports? Do you offer that ability?
We do it. We do it on the broadcast channel. I don't think we've done that to date in the digital platform.
Gotcha. Well, I'll give Mark Lazarus. I'll give him another cycle, and
There
he'll
you
probably
go.
get that. He'll probably get that going. Let's talk about news.
Yes.
I know that both local and national has also been a big area of investment for you.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I think we are living in a time that Latinos, more so than usual, are very hungry and are seeking out news and information about what's going on in the world, particularly about the issues that impact them and matter to them. And so from an overall sentiment, I think we're in a good place because Latinos are very much looking for this type of news and information. Second is, you know, we made with our hat of investing in our business and really thinking of our business over the long term, we as a company and Telemundo made a decision a few years ago, which I think was the right decision, to invest in our local station news business. Now it was a little counterintuitive at the time because it's easy to think about it now retroactively, but at the time we started making that investment, most of the media industry was retracting from the local station, the local news business, for fair reasons. We took a little bit of a longer term approach and we decided to invest. And fast forward to today, that investment in news sets, new stations, new markets, upgrading our talent in front and behind the camera is paying incredible dividends for us. And for those of us in the broadcast television business, we always like to say the backbone of a successful broadcast television business is the strength and the health of your local TV stations. And so the NBCU and the Telemundo story in local stations is really incredible. Not only have we catapulted to #1 in many of the major markets in Spanish language, which was a little bit of a foreshadow for us of what ended up happening with Telemundo over the national business. We're also seeing Telemundo be #1 in some major local markets, regardless of language. So that's been fantastic for us. On the network news side, we have been also making a lot of investments. Last year's election cycle, as you can imagine, created a tremendous amount of opportunity to do a lot of innovative work. But aside from the editorial coverage, and I think the responsibility that we feel to our community to make sure that we cover news in a very transparent, in a very balanced way so that they have access to information so that they can make decisions for themselves and for their lives. I think we're also very proud of one milestone we hit 2 years ago. So, and this is a great example of how the Latino community is crossing over. Jose Diaz-Balart, who you may know is our anchor, our network news anchor on Telemundo Monday to Friday, about a year and a half ago was also named to be Lester Holt's backup on NBC Nightly News, the weekend edition. So
and he's also on MSNBC quite a bit.
So exactly. So putting aside that poor Jose, I don't think sleeps, right? I mean, Monday to Friday in Miami and then Saturday and Sunday here in New York, and then he goes back and starts it again. I think the message is a great message for us is that, now we have someone who is a leader in the Latino community also being able to do it in the English space. And we're very proud of that, and I think that's also contributed to some of the momentum we see in the news division.
Especially for your local stations, you have to, if you want to have that, that presence, you have to have that whole package of news and sports.
I think that's right.
We're going to get to Q&A here in just a second, so think of some good questions. But before, I just want to ask
This is not a shy audience, I can tell.
I just want to ask you quickly. I know NBCUniversal, your cable channel, that's been a bit of a more of an uphill climb. Can you talk about sort of where things stand with that and what your strategy is right now?
Sure. Our Telemundo Enterprises portfolio has a lot of businesses. The Telemundo Broadcast Network, our local stations, our emerging business, our Telemundo Studios business, which produces 80% of our content, our Telemundo International business, which sells our content overseas, but also the Telemundo network exists in about 40 countries overseas, and we program it throughout the world. Our cable network is Universal, And Universal has gone through a few iterations. And so about 2 years ago, we did have some challenges with it. 2 years ago, we made the decision to rebrand it, reposition it, and change the programming strategy. And fast forward to today, we're very proud. Last year, it finished as the fastest growing Hispanic entertainment cable network. And what we've tried to do is really bring entertainment stories that, frankly, doesn't make sense for a large broadcast audience. We bring it in the cable, more niche space. And it's worked great for us. We've been able to bring more innovative and edgier stories. We've been able to experiment much more with realities. We've created our version of the Kardashians in the Riveras, and that's worked very well. And we've also brought some English language franchises that performed particularly well with the Latino community, like The Walking Dead, that had never been seen or never been done in Spanish. And so with a combination of those things, we've seen a great thing. And Universal will play an important role for us during the World Cup coverage as well.
Right, gotcha. All right, let's see. Anybody got a question?
Zika, NBCUniversal. I have a question about the demographics you mentioned. Obviously, the young demo is very important for Telemundo. How do you see the interaction between digital and linear as we go forward? Because obviously young people are increasingly on social media and on digital networks, even on some of the new social media such as Snapchat, etc.
Sure. So thank you for the question. So first and foremost, I think in this day and age, we think of all platforms all at once. I mean, it's the way people consume, they're consuming sort of agnostically. So, thinking of digital along with linear is, it should be, and it's increasingly becoming sort of the norm. I think the second, in our particular case, the Latino demographic, as many of us know, over-indexes on the usage of social media, on the consumption of all things digital. And so I think in our particular case, we have to be particularly innovative and forward-leaning. And the approach that we've tried to take is, I think we've been cognizant of what we are good at and what we're not. And one of the things that we're very good at is we live and breathe the Latino community 24/7, 365 days a year. And it's those unique insights that I think has been a contributor to our success. In the same breath, we're not a technology company. And so what we've tried to do is go out and partner with best-in-breed companies throughout the industry. And so from a macro perspective, we at NBCUniversal have invested in what we think are leading digital DNA companies like Snapchat, like BuzzFeed, like Vox. And so we at Telemundo have been able to partner with them to bring our expertise in the Hispanic space, which they want to attract and they want to tackle, and partner with them to leverage their strengths on the distribution side and their technology. And so we've seen great partnerships, and it's performed extraordinarily well for us. And so I think we'll continue to see innovation on that front.
Do you measure, so much of television is not just watching it live, but the second screen activity, the recapping. Yeah. Do you gauge the success of programming by how much chatter is out there, how much how much discussion it sparks online? Yeah,
no, the answer is we do. There is a measurement company out there that, for reasons I'm about to state will become obvious, is our favorite one out there. It's one called Shareably, and Shareably ranks media companies and networks along the strength of their social engagement. And Telemundo has consistently ranked as one of the top 3 networks in the country, regardless of language, behind ESPN and Fox News, as far as the engagement and the connection that the content has with their audience. And so, and that takes into account a number of different of inputs. But the short answer is yes, it's something that we take into account, and I think that's been one of the contributors to our success, is that our audience connects, I think, in a unique way with our content, and that's allowed them to continue not only to consume it, but also to do other things.
Gotcha. Anybody else got a question over here?
I'll stand up because I'm a chaparra. Hey, Cesar.
Hey, Maria.
So interesting, Maria Hinojosa, president of the Futuro Media Group, Latino USA, in the thick. So it's actually an NBCUniversal property that I was recently catching up on in a binge, which is Law & Order SVU, that actually documented what I think is probably the most realistic capturing of what an ICE intervention detention actually looks like. It was pretty riveting. But we don't usually see that, as you know. So my question to you is, because of the fact that you are so deeply connected to the community, we all know that there are two things that are happening right now in the United States of America. On the one hand, there's this extraordinary growth, like you're seeing, like we're seeing, and this deep engagement. And on the other hand, there's this whole other level of, panic, insanity, worry, people not leaving their homes, which I suppose might not be a bad thing in terms of people watching television. I knew that was going to get a laugh, but it's horrible. Because we know that people are not leaving to go to the corner, to the bodega. So my question is, how are you managing that as a company, the fact that both things are happening at the same time?
Yeah. No, thank you, Maria, for the question. Look, I think it goes without saying, this past election, I think, was an inflection point for the community. And there is certainly a palpable signs in portions of the country within the Latino community of some fear and some anxiety. And we're very, very cognizant of that. I'd say a few things. One is, it's exactly in those situations where we believe that our role as journalists, our role covering the news is so important. And so we've tried to do two things. On the one hand, we really have tried to create content that educates the community as to what's going on out there. I'll give you one tangible example. When we started getting a lot of this type of sentiment and feedback from the community, we decided late last year, right after the election and the beginning of this year, we decided to put some town halls, live town halls on the air. And the team came up with this concept and they said, we want to go in prime time on a Sunday night and go into the community and let people ask questions to experts as to what's going on. And at first, I think we all said, gosh, Sunday night is one of the most competitive nights in the marketplace. But you know what? It's the right thing to do. Fast forward, we put on our first town hall. It was the most seen show on Sunday night, certainly in that weekend, but the entire season. And what it taught us was, and by the way, and the format was very straightforward. We just opened the doors, we let people come in. We had a few hundred people in the auditorium. And what we did is we brought experts. We brought lawyers, we brought psychologists, and the like. And our journalist, in this particular case, it was Jose, was simply asking people to tell their stories of what they were seeing in their community. And what we think, it was extraordinarily therapeutic for people to see that they were not alone. And that was one of, I think, the important messages that was communicated, that the honest answers, we couldn't tell them the answers to what was going on, because I think there's still a lot of things were going on in flux. And so I give you that as one example. And we've continued to do those town halls, and we believe that that's our role as media, to ensure that people are getting access to information so that they can best answer the questions and make decisions in their own respective lives. The second thing we've done is we have doubled down in our local news business, as I alluded to, and particularly in some markets, we're making sure that we're going into to our communities and covering some of these stories that are occurring. And it's important that the word gets out about that, but it's increasing the amount of coverage in local news that we also think is helping.
You've also done, I know, you've done a lot in the way of nonpartisan voter registration drives. I know there was a lot of community-based sort of outreach and to make sure that people were aware of their rights and ability to register to vote. That was a big investment.
It was a big investment. I would tell you it's part of a larger initiative for us. Hispanic media, Spanish language media, does have a little bit of a different some different activity that occurs than in English language media. Mm-hmm. I am a believer, we are believers, that we have a tremendous privilege to serve this community, but with that privilege comes a unique responsibility, and it's a responsibility to ensure that we help our community on the issues that matter most to them. And so in our particular case, Telemundo took the initiative last year to launch a multi-year community platform, called Community Empowerment Platform, called El Poder en Ti, or The Power in You. And anytime you survey the Latino community, there's really three primary issues that are top of mind for them. It's their education, it's their healthcare, and it's their financial literacy. And so, long story short, we decided to create comprehensive campaigns around each of those three verticals to make sure that they had access to information that would help them better their lives. We added a fourth pillar to that, El Poder en Ti initiative, around civic engagement, because we want to make sure that Latinos feel that they have access and they know how best to exercise all of their civic rights, whether it is apply for citizenship if they're eligible, whether it is to register to vote, and of course go to the polls. It's in all of our community's interest, it's in our country's interest that everyone's voice be heard, and so we do it in a very nonpartisan way, but we do think that that's part of the responsibility of Hispanic media to make sure that they know what is available to them.
Absolutely, and to your earlier point too, in terms of bringing a certain earthiness to the storylines that your shows tackle, I would imagine that the events of, the often horrifying events of the past few months will work its way. Your dramatists will work some of that into the stories that you tell.
As we touched on briefly early on, many of our scripted drama shows are talking about many of these authentic situations that the Latino community is experiencing here in the United States, and we think it's the right thing to do, but it's certainly something that the audience has reacted to, because I think it speaks to the reality that many are living, and I think there's no substitute for authenticity.
Absolutely. We got time for one last question.
Hi, this is Octavio Blanco. I cover the Latino economy at CNN Money, and I'm also the co-founder of Live in Americana, which is a startup focusing on the Latino community in the United States. So my question is really about language, because I attended your party, the upfront party, which was a blast. Thank you, Luis. But everything was in English. So is there a move, considering the changes in the demographics, the 200%ers, are you guys considering any move towards English programming on Telemundo? And then also, would you be on the lookout to collaborate with, outfits that are doing this kind of reporting in English?
Sure. So thank you. I'd say a few things. One is, we at Telemundo Enterprise, our strategy in our core business is and will continue to be to program in high-quality Spanish language content. I think there is a tremendous amount of demand for it in the marketplace. We've seen that over the last 30+ years here in the United States, and that's our competitive advantage. And so we're going to continue to do that, making sure that we customize and innovate that content to speak more uniquely, as we've talked about, to the Latino experience here in the United States. But Spanish language is the way we will continue to go in our core business. In addition to that, though, we also are very cognizant when we look at our digital business, and you look at the interaction that we see in social media, it is very common for us to see English and Spanish being used in the digital platform. When people are watching some of our best shows, we're watching sort of all the social media streams, and it's unbelievable. I mean, they're following it in English and commenting in English. Someone will be commenting in Spanish and going back forward with someone in English. So we're cognizant of that, and we think that's wonderful. And when it relates to content, I think in certain platforms, we are always open to do things that can help build the Telemundo brand. One example is we just announced a partnership with Universal, and we created a new business called Telemundo Films. And we have started to create, very humbly, low-budget films in English in this particular case, but we'll also do in Spanish, to speak to what we think is a very, very robust movie-going audience here in the United States. And our first release came out earlier this year. It was called Lowriders. It was based in LA, and that Eva Longoria and Damon Bashir starred in it. And we want to make sure that we're offering all types of content and platform to our consumers. And so in some of the other platforms, we'll look at things, but our core, it's been tried and true, and that's why we're growing, is we'll continue to stay in Spanish.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like we scratched the surface, but it's time for